today we have Dr. Andrew Lee and Mr. Adam Roloff as our session facilitators. Simply, Dr. Lee is a postdoctoral researcher in the Department of Medical Education at SIU. Mr. Roloff is research assistant professor at the Medical Library at SIU. So Andrew and Adam, thank you for helping us understand the nuts and bolts of the literature review. The stage.
Okay. Thank you for your introduction. And today we will talk about the literature review. I'm going to discuss why we do the literature review in research and cover the overall process of the literature review. And Adam is going to talk more on the practical part of literature review, including literature search from a database and documenting the search using bibliographic management tool. So I think you have done literature review. Many of you have done it before, but I just want to start with clearing our concept about the literature review first. So I prepared those two definitions from the literature. Okay. So first one is critical analysis of what is known about the study topic, the themes related to it, and the various perspectives expressed regarding the topic. And another definition said that our literature review is a systematic review of existing body of data that identifies, evaluates, and synthesizes for explicit presentation. So from those definitions, I can see three main factors here to define a literature review. First one is systematic review. Literature review is not just randomly search the literature and not randomly collecting any literature. It's a systematic process to find and synthesize the literature. That's the first main part. And the second one, basically literature review is examining our body of the knowledge, our current understanding of the. So there are many different purposes. I will talk about it later, but purpose of the literature review is to examine our body of the knowledge to identify any gaps there or identify any future research topics and generate some hypotheses and some tests. So examining the body of the knowledge is the main part of the literature review. The third one is that I think the literature review is not just collecting the literature and characterizing them. It's a critical analysis of those literature. So just characterizing the literature is not the purpose of the literature. We need to add our interpretation and our analysis. In those three factors are really important for the literature review. So let's go to the then why we do a literature review. Okay. Let me stop just go. Okay. Okay. So then let's think about why we do a literature review. So basically, we do the literature review to identify what we know about the topic. So that's the kind of main goal of the literature review. So through identifying what have been studied on the topic, we can uh, kind of find if there is any meaningful trend or patterns in the literature. Uh, so we can generate some hypotheses from that kind of trends and patterns. Also, the literature review is essential to generalize our findings. So after we do a empirical studies, through a literature review, we can generalize our findings and how it should be applied to our practice. So that's another reason we do the literature review. And also we do the literature review to generate some new frameworks or theories. So after we do a literature review, we can find what are the previous frameworks or theories in those topics, and we can find some other improvement way to add some features to the framework or remove some of the concept from the framework, so we can revise the framework and propose a new framework. So we do a literature review. And definitely after identifying our knowledge gap through the literature review, can propose further research and can find where we should do further investigation. So those 5 are the general reasons to do a literature review. And as you already know, that there are different types of literature review. So mainly there are 2 types. So the first one is the literature review section or background section in the literature research articles or dissertations. So as you may already know that all the research include literature review, because without the literature review, you cannot show the originality of your research. So even though it's qualitative, quantitative, any type of research should include literature review first to show that your research is based on the previous research and what you can add the value to the body of our knowledge. So that's the basic of the reason why we do the literature review in our research. And also, you see many articles titled with review, some kind of review in the title. So systematic review, just literature review in the title. So that's a standalone research that you can do with the literature review. The literature review can be a standalone research. And through the literature review, you can add the knowledge to our current body of the knowledge. And by understanding deeper about the knowledge or critically analyzing our body of knowledge. So the literature review can be a standalone research. So if you are involved in any type of the research, you should do the okay. Also, if we think about the literature review methodologies, there are several different methodologies. But one kind of studies revealed that there are 14 different types of the literature review, and so there are many different. And I listed some of the examples here, but we have a limited time today, so I will just briefly introduce 3 of them here. Let's start with systematic review. You can notice from the name itself, the systematic review follows a rigorous systematic process. So you should clearly define your selection strategy and should do a comprehensive literature searches for systematic review. And for analyzing data, many times systematic review include quantitative analysis of the selected research, selected literature, and provides some narrative synthesis of the findings and plan. Similarly, with the systematic review, scoping review also do a systematic process of selecting the literature. But the scoping review is more focusing on mapping the literature. So they are more focused on the breadth of the literature, not the depth of the literature review. So their inclusion criteria might be more broader than the systematic review. And they usually do for the scoping review, we usually do a thematic or conceptual overview of the literature, so we can highlight the range of the evidence. Okay. And for the narrative review, it's less structured than systematic review. It may not describe specific selection strategy, and it is quite common in the literature review section in a research. It provides a qualitative or descriptive synthesis through organizing key themes and concepts. Okay. So I just briefly talk about the methodologies, but I recommend you to have your own time to study more about it because it is really important to plan your literature review. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about the process. So now we know why we have to do the literature review, and there are many types of literature review, but what we actually need to do for the literature review. So first of all, we need to generate our research questions. So after we generate our research question or topics to do the literature review, we have to do the planning. If you don't do the plan, your literature review can be very cannot be a systematic. So if you don't have your plan to what kind of database you are going to search and what kind of search terms you are going to use and what kind of selection strategies you are going to use, without those, you cannot even define what is your literature review. After you plan your review, we do the actual literature search. And with the search data, we screen for the inclusion, and then we extract the data from the selected literature and analyze or synthesize the data. That's the overall just general process. For the selection process, normally the standalone literature review use systematic literature selection, even though it does not say that it's a systematic literature review. So these steps are the there was a delay in the slide, but so those 5 steps are just general process of selecting the literature. So we start with database selection, can search terms and strategies. You should have such terms and strategies when you plan your literature review. So using those terms and strategies, we draw the literature from the database, and we screen those to narrow down to our real target. So usually we do the title screening, review of the title. We do the review of the title and exclude the literature that is not related. And after that, we usually do the abstract review, and we exclude that. And I really recommend you to document your process while you are doing this. How many literature you can find in the database, how many literature you exclude after the title screen, something like that. Because if you want to publish your literature review article, you should describe those process in your code. So that's the general kind of process of the literature review here. And I think many of you already know about Prisma, prepared reporting items of systematic reviews and meta-analysis. You already know about this, but if you have not heard about this, I recommend you to go to this website, prismastatement.org. They show the history of this format and many kind of format you can use to make a figure for your literature review process. So if you have read literature review articles before, then you may find similar kind of figures on the screen in the literature. Okay. After you identify the literatures you are going to review, you have to extract the data from the literature. So I recommend you to use an Excel or similar tools to make a list of the literature you have identified, and then you have to decide which data you are going to use for your analysis. So the table can be different based on your research topic, but while you are doing the literature review, please make some kind of tables that include information about the article and then the data you are going to analyze. It will be really helpful for you to analyze the data later. I have discussed the synthesis method a little bit before, but there are many different ways of synthesizing the data. After you extract it from the literature, you can analyze the data with the quantitative approach like meta-analysis, or you can use qualitative approach like a narrative or thematic synthesis. You can kind of build a framework through a conceptual synthesis. So we have a limited time today, so we cannot discuss further about the synthesis today, but please have your own time to learn more about different types of data synthesis. So I just briefly introduce the process and why we are doing the literature review, and Adam will cover the practical part of the literature search.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. All right, so now we're going to talk about the actual searching parts of our literature review. I promise to get into incredible detail and bore everybody during this process, or maybe I won't. Maybe it'll be quite entertaining. So when we're talking about our literature review and the actual searching of it, for those of you who have done a literature review, how was your experience with the actual searching of the literature? Was it good? Was it frustrating? Did it take a long more than you thought it would? Was it an easier process?
Usually gives a lot of very long list of the literature. It's difficult to narrow it down.
It really can be difficult to narrow it down. We're going to talk about that today, actually. And that can be the most frustrating part of our literature review, right? We're excited to talk about it. We're excited for our topics. We spent so much time coming up with our research topic, but actually getting all the data and trying to go from there, and as Dr. Lee said, to synthesize it and analyze it can be quite a bit tricky.
And the other side is, did I miss anything really significant?
Right, and that all depends on the type of literature review we're doing as well. If we're doing a systematic review, I mean, we're not just going to jump up and do that tomorrow. That's going to be a year-long process, at least by itself. And then we're trying to find everything that has been published. But among the 14 different types of reviews that we can do, we definitely can do shorter ones that are not 100% comprehensive of everything that has been published. Keep that in mind too, because yeah, we have different types, and how do we know if we're getting everything? And so kind of as like Dr. Lee mentioned, have a plan to begin with. I mean, not just our research question, but also what is our plan, even starting to come up with your exclusion criteria right off the bat, even before we've delved into the literature, can be kind of a good step to kind of help put us in place. Searching multiple resources. With databases, we'll talk about databases later too. There's oftentimes the one we like the best because we use it the best, Web of Science. I know Dr. Hahn likes that. PubMed is a biomedicine database. There's many different types of databases and other types of resources as well. So it's really great to search multiple ones. I helped with a literature search one time, and the person wanted to know about rescue personnel who go to rescue people from grain bin silo emergencies. So grain bin silos, big structures, the grain goes in there, farmers can fall in, and it actually acts like quicksand. People can become trapped, asphyxiate. Very sad. A lot of the literature in PubMed Web of Science is about the actual process of what happens to the victim, how to resuscitate them. Not a lot was written about the rescue personnel trying to rescue people. So I looked in some agricultural databases, wondering if perhaps, since that is the field, get it, field, agriculture, we all laughed, maybe there was more written in there. Turns out there was quite a lot written about rescue personnel, techniques, and how to do it. So that is just one thing to kind of keep in mind, is one resource, one database is not the end all in our process here. As Dr. Lee mentioned, documenting everything that we're doing every step of the way. This is just as scientific of a process as anything else we're doing in the sciences, right? So just documenting it all, not just for ourselves to help reduce some stress, but also for when we're actually publishing and putting all this together. Same thing with critically evaluating information retrieved. And as Dr. Lee said, we have to really start to think critically all of our way through this process. So now we have begun our searching, we have found some stuff. It can be overwhelming, but what are we kind of doing with what we see first? So we need to kind of keep in mind what our evidence-based resources are. So we have actually this pyramid of our evidence. Anyone familiar with the pyramid? Encountered it before? All right, so one thing for us to kind of keep in mind, even though it's structured like a pyramid, resources on the bottom are not bad. They're not any worse than anything at the top. The top is not anything better necessarily at the bottom. But we work our way up and we can work our way down. At the top is going to be all of our reviews, syntheses, and our summaries, right? We have taken all of the things from the bottom, all of the unfiltered stuff, the very numerous various studies that are out there, and they have kind of their own hierarchy too. And we have sat down and then added and reviewed them and published about them. And so that's kind of where we get here in our pyramid, where the top is reviews and analysis, synthesis of everything at the bottom. The bottom is what provides all the information for the top. So as you're pulling information together, you can pay attention to the different types of our information here. And perhaps, some of our summaries are not getting everything, or a good follow-up is that we review other summaries, other analysis, and then look from when that was published onward. And from that date to current, there might not be other synthesis or reviews published. So we may need to actually start looking at the unfiltered information again, to kind of keep that in mind, and kind of rebuild as we go up.
Yeah, so I agree that it can be different sources for literature review, that some literature review is looking for evidence of the drug effect. For example, they would like to see controlled studies only rather than opinion. So,
Correct.
or some kind of synthesis of all variables, then they are looking for even not controlled studies, but observational studies and some other kinds of empirical studies. So that's another thing. And then even beyond that, not only empirical studies, they would like to see expert opinion or synthesis of the paper. So that can be a more like inclusive kind of literature review. So anyway, I think that's kind of helpful to narrow down what we are looking for here in the literature review.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes, because we can sometimes just by looking think that systematic review is what we need to go with, and that's our gold standard. But it is what it is,
Right.
and there's other things that we can't narrow our focus to.
Yeah. So the system review, for example, looking for statistical power of some impact. They are looking for quantitative studies, controlled studies. So they are analyzed like meta-analysis. But system review that doesn't necessarily look for that, then they would go for some other resources. Scoping review, by the way, though, scoping review is looking for some topics in some concept or topic in that specific field. Then they are looking for all the variables rather than impact only study. So it's kind of what kind of literature review you need in the specific circumstance, and then looking for those studies. So sorry, I just kind of jumped in.
No, it's great to know and great to point out too. And like I said, this is things we need to keep in mind when we're doing our reviews that we may not actually think about. This is just kind of all part of the process that we need to add in there. And so as we're talking about our types of evidence, our types of source material, we can actually break them down into 4 different categories. Once again, one is not better than the other. But if we're looking at our primary resources, so these are going to be original source material, not previously published. Journals, primarily peer-reviewed, of course, is going to be kind of our standard approach. Dissertations, meeting abstracts, and of course, patents. Secondary is going to be material that evaluates the primary sources. So this is our evaluations of the original work. Textbooks, by the way, fall into the secondary category as well, because they are compilation of previously published material and the reviews and expert opinions on that. Textbooks, directories, encyclopedias, journals, especially review articles, fall into our secondary type here. Tertiary would be sources that review secondary sources, so review of reviews. May also kind of be the same category as secondary. Almanacs, bibliographies, directories, encyclopedias. Encyclopedias pull double duty here. Textbooks can also fall into tertiary. Gray literature is a 4th category. It is one that librarians in particular love to talk about. We definitely do not have time today to go real into the weeds on that one. But gray literature is really anything that is published outside of the usual publication routes. So bulletins, committee reports, government documents, conference abstracts. One of the most frustrating things we can encounter in our searching is that conference abstracts, which is just an abstract of the entire conference and what was discussed there, and the different topics discussed there, they can be indexed in databases as well. And oftentimes, a conference abstract might have the exact wording for what we're looking for. It is the perfect title. We feel that, man, this is going to be the article for us. We get the full text copy of it, and it turns out it is only the abstract. There is nothing else to it because that was the only thing actually published about that. So that can be pretty disappointing. In that case, some routes are to, especially since it is published, find the authors of who may have presented at the conference and try to contact them directly to get a copy, or if there's another route to get their information. But gray literature, it can be overlooked because it is just published and found differently. Google Scholar is actually a good way to kind of find some gray literature, just because of how Google Scholar actually works. So just kind of keep that in mind too as we're figuring out our sources here.
Questions. What's the difference between meeting abstract and conference abstract? Same or?
It kind of all depends on what they are. Meeting abstracts are going to be, since they're primary, they are really the original material. I am perhaps presenting on this for the first time. We are having a meeting on this for the first time. We're really discussing kind of the nit and gritty there. Kind of need to kind of compare them sometimes. I always have personally a hard time kind of remembering them a little bit as well. But it's just kind of that primary versus different. For conference abstracts, I'm going to be presenting a paper that I've not published yet, but perhaps it's even a review. So I've already gone through, reviewed, synthesized things. So it's kind of further along that path versus talking about the topic to begin with. At least that's kind of always been my impression of the differences between them. Really good question.
Actually, personally, I don't really use the abstract as an evidence to literature review.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of gray area, and you want to just focus on peer-reviewed material. Even dissertation is peer reviewed by the committee. Sometimes it's really good, but so I would be more focused on more peer-reviewed material. Even book chapters, there might be some peer-reviewed book chapters, and maybe not. So you want to just look at some like rigorous the knowledge production process. Sometimes some journals are accreditatory; they don't only go for peer review. So even like you look for some journal names and stuff like that. So.
And exactly. And to answer your question from earlier, how do we know if we're getting everything? This is when we need to branch out to some of these other areas, especially kind of stuff that falls into the gray literature that would not be coming up in a PubMed or Web of Science or other database search. And maybe the only thing that does exist is that abstract. Is that the best material to present as part of our topic? No, but if we're wanting to be comprehensive, if we're doing a full comprehensive search, those are the areas we need to consider as well. So yeah, we're good. Well, so now we've kind of touched about our types of materials and our sources, evidence. So we need to kind of also now start to consider our databases, where we're actually going to be searching to find our information. So each database is unique to its coverage and its organizational structure. In library land, we like to say that each database has its own language to it, and this is kind of basically true. Some of our major biological and medical science databases are PubMed. PubMed is basically kind of the search platform for Medline. Another great one is Web of Science, which also pulls from Medline. While PubMed is a strictly biomedicine database, Web of Science also includes from psychology and some other fields in there as well. So it's a good one to explore as well. If you do searching in PubMed and Web of Science concurrently, you will find overlap between them, which is actually a good thing. Makes a little bit of work at the end when you have to kind of, exclude a few things because you have doubles of something, but it's good to kind of keep in mind. The NCBI bioinformatics database and tools, including things like the protein database, GeneBank, ClinVar, etc., are also important ones. Clinical pharmacology, of course, is a very important one when we're getting to the pharmacology side of things. So yeah, databases are not all equal. For example, we'll touch on it briefly today. PubMed uses something called the MESH. It's the medical subject headings. It's a controlled vocabulary created by the National Library of Medicine makes searching within PubMed quite a bit easier. Unfortunately, only PubMed uses it. Different databases may have some sort of controlled vocabulary, but nothing nearly as robust as Mesh is in PubMed. If we're searching multiple databases, it can be frustrating because we kind of think we need to start all over from the beginning. Because the way I built it in PubMed is not the way I'm building the search in Web of Science or anything else. So it makes us feel like we have to start all over from the beginning. Is that actually true? No. Instead, we just like if we're learning another language, right? We have to kind of just learn how to translate our search from one database to the other. So that is going back to our plan that Dr. Lee had mentioned is, need to figure out and continually review our question as we move along too, because we may accidentally discover a whole new route as we go. But if we are reviewing our question, keeping all of that in mind and able to keep a focus on our main points, that makes translating it into different databases quite a lot easier. There's different models that you can also use, PICO, various other kinds that help you break down your research question. That can also be useful at this point or at any point along with, but just kind of keep focus on our essential elements and not get too lost in our process here. So while we're searching, I do want to also kind of point out Boolean operators. In case anyone does not know what these are, doesn't think in these terms, Boolean operators are and, or, and not. So and, we're combining two things together. We want to know about medical students and feedback. So when we construct that in a search engine, we're telling it we want articles that talk about medical students and feedback. Or means we want articles about, so we want medical students and feedback, but within that feedback arm, as we call it, we want to know feedback or reviews or evaluations of the students. So in that case, we want medical students and feedback or evaluation. Not is exactly what it sounds like. So we want to know medical students and evaluation or feedback, not nursing students or dental students. Truthfully, as we talked earlier, we don't want to be too focused on something. Perhaps our research, we really are focused on medical students, but if we're thinking education route, there's not much difference in our overall education framework if we're talking about medical students or dental students or nursing students. Students are students at a certain point. So if we use not, if we were to use not to exclude nursing students, dental students, we're telling the search engine to remove any article where that appears. That is good. That can be a way to help narrow down our search results. It can also do its job too well. If we are perhaps searching for something, a medical condition that occurs in both adults and children, and we are only focused on the children, so we exclude, we have not adults, it'll do just that. It'll move anything, like I said, with adults in it, but perhaps there are articles or reviews that talk about both adults and children in it. And we may be hampering ourselves in that process. So in my purview as a medical librarian, I do not use not as much unless I've had a good exchange with the person I'm helping with the search, and I feel really well that I know what they're looking for. If not, I may include it and give them two different result sets and just inform them of what I'm doing here. So I wanted to kind of give us a sample question for kind of us to kind of think about. So our sample question is, what strategies and interventions can be implemented to enhance both the quantity and quality of clinical evaluations and written formative feedback for medical students in emergency medicine? And what are their overall impacts on student learning outcomes and overall competence? So big question here, took me a little while to read through. But this is the kind of research question we're going to be coming up with before we begin our review, right? So does anyone kind of pick out the main parts of this question? What do you feel are the essential components that maybe we would start kind of focusing our search on?
I would pick medical students, feedback, and interpret.
Exactly. Everybody's getting it. Yeah. So once, yeah, the example I just gave, medical students or feedback, Dr. Han said, so kind of identifying what our questions are, and then we can start searching in our database.
I would put like medical students or health professions education.
There you go.
Because so we can learn from nursing.
We exactly
Right.
can. Would you start with that at the beginning, or would you include that further along in the process?
See what happened with the first search, and then if not many, then include more inclusive term.
Right, because we can accidentally become too narrow in our searching and then not get a lot of results, or the dreaded 0 results. And so then we have to kind of work our way back up broader. So it really kind of just depends where you feel you are in your search. Starting broad is a good way to do it. It's at least that way you can kind of get a feel for what's out there. That's what I do as a medical librarian when I help someone with a search. I kind of want to just start to find a few articles to begin with to help me start to find my terms and narrow things down. If we have time, I'll actually do a little bit of a PubMed demonstration in a little bit. But I wanted to, based on our question, give you guys kind of 2 breakdowns of searches. So if we're going to start broad with our search, this is what we call a search string. And it looks kind of complicated. In a way, it's almost its own little form of code. If we were kind of talking computer language here, it's not a code, but kind of is in its own way a little bit. So we have our arms, and in this case, we have medical students and medical education undergraduate, which includes our medical students. So that's our first arm, and we can make each arm as expansive as we want to. We can get a little bit too crazy with it. I had a colleague who did a search for something that in the United States, and she actually ended up breaking down and specifically listed each of the states of the United States in the search. And it really only got her like 5 more results in the end than it had just been the United States. So we can go a little bit too far with this. But for us, we just have 2 components to our first arm, medical students and medical undergraduate education. Our second arm is evaluation studies or clinical competence. These mesh things you see here in the brackets, this is that medical subject heading, the controlled vocabulary that PubMed uses. And it's arranged in a hierarchy structure. So it's searching a lot of things by using mesh. So we have evaluation studies, clinical competence, formative feedback. And for this one, I did actually include not nurses or dental. It's the asterisk is used to truncate the word. So I don't have to spell out nurse, nursing students, all that. I can just kind of shorten that up quite a bit. Same with dental. And just doing this search ended up with 12,787 results. So not going to be our first happy numbers, right? I mean, we're not looking at 200,000 results, so already we're kind of in the positive. Way too many results for us to truly be able to sit down. Now, if we were working with a team on our review, especially like a systematic review, this is still going to be quite a lot. And we're still unfocused here. But what's important about organizing a search in this manner with a search string is that we can repeat this search. This is not just going into PubMed or a database, tapping around some terms, adding some things here and there. This is an organized and structured search. We can copy this and paste this right into the search bar of PubMed and be taken directly to these 12,787 results. This is what we need to keep track, as Dr. Lee explained, for ourselves, because this is going to go into the methodology section of our literature review. This is where we're going to write about, we searched PubMed, we searched Web of Science, we used this search string, we got this number of results, and then we go into our inclusion, exclusion writing. But this is repeatable. This is repeatable by us. It's repeatable by us in a week. It is repeatable by the editors at the journal. This appears in our published work. We can go back to this 5 years from now and search, we can then even filter this question by most recent to see what's been published since then. Someone reading our article can do so, and we are thus contributing through our publication to, the betterment of the literature. But we're still broad, right? If we want to focus it by a little bit, just everything is the same in our second point here, except I added and emergency medicine. From our research question we saw earlier, just adding that in there dropped us to 210 results. We're now more focused. We are now more able to manage these results. These are results that one person or a team could easily break up, go through, review title, abstract, and be able to kind of then put them into our inclusion and exclusion criteria. And once again, this is repeatable. And the nice thing about these is, just to use a quick phrase, they're plug and play, copy and paste into the database, and then you can change out or add other terms here. For myself, if I'm helping someone, I usually feel that I've reached a good point when no matter what I kind of change within my search string, I'm seeing basically the same results. I'm not getting anything wildly different or less. So that makes me feel like I've got this kind of formed good. So like I said, we've gone from 12,000 to 210 just by even adding one term, which is, of course, is based off our research question there. And for our publication, and for our own frustration and for our scientific repeatability of our search is really the key. I mentioned Google Scholar. It's a good resource to use. Google Scholar is not a good one for repeatable searches. This search is specifically built for PubMed. If we're going to translate this into another database, we would, of course, have to do that. As I said, Mesh only exists in PubMed. So those are just kind of things. But because we've already built this to begin with, we can now see it as kind of a whole and then start to keep our main points identified as we translate it to a different search. So now we have done this. We have gotten our results. We're good to go, but we didn't do anything with bibliographic management. And now we have hundreds of results and we feel doomed because we have to somehow put this together. Or perhaps we did this to begin with. We, in fact, as Dr. Lee said, we documented, we had our plan, we scientifically and systematically organized ourselves in a way that we can easily keep track of our search strategy and keep a list of our resources. I like to just add a little joke that it does not matter how you do bibliographic management, whatever works for you and your team, if you're working with a team, works. Even if it's bar napkins that you write all this down on, please don't do that. That's the joke part. Don't write this down on napkins. But in theory, however you and your team work to this, whether it's Excel or using a bibliographic management software, do this from the beginning, from the start, and have everyone on the same page. Because if I'm using one way and Dr. Sa is using a different way and Dr. Lee is using a different way, and then we try to combine these together, we may not be able to easily add all of our references together, and we begin to have stress and things that aren't as great. So and the best way to really do it is to use a bibliographic management software, EndNote being one of them, to save your citations. So EndNote, it's more, if we think about bibliographic management, a lot of times, if we've heard about it, what we might think is just a way to quickly generate our reference list for our paper, but it's so much more than that. What we can do is we can do searches in PubMed, and we can download our entire search, whether 200 or 12,000, we don't want to do that many, but we can download all of those and pull them right into a software like EndNote and have our entire list in there already. EndNote also has great functionality to be able to search the web for full text. If it's something that's published and free as full text, we can also sync it with in our case, the SOU Medical Library. And if we have it available and it's synced up correctly, you can also pull down the PDFs, attach them directly to your reference within EndNote, thus making that a whole lot easier as well. You can share your library in EndNote with your teammates and to be able to kind of keep, and everyone can add. EndNote does have a steep learning curve. So this can get to be kind of a little bit of a problem. That's why from the beginning, everyone's on the same page. Everyone has taken the time to kind of learn how to do it. For anyone here, the medical library, if you're interested, we do have some videos walking you through the basics of EndNote. And we can also happy to do like the full hour class going through the software and how to do it. It is definitely, as I've said, most helpful from the beginning. If we try to do this later on in the process, it's not going to go well at all. Zotero is another one that's pretty popular. There are several different ones. RefWorks as well. EndNote is freely available to all SIU affiliated people. If you just contact tech support, our IT department, let them know if it's a personal or work computer, and you can have it installed. Everyone on the team can. It's a great resource to have. So just to kind of wrap things up here, just kind of a few things to keep in mind. The SIU Medical Library exists. We are here to help all of you from the beginning of your project all the way through up until you're ready for publication. We do have our specific roles that we fill within that process. We do literature searches. We're happy to do the research along with you. We do not synthesize or analyze any of the results. It would just be me making things up, and that's not going to be good for anyone anywhere in our process. We do have various guides on our website to help walk through some of these processes, as well as EndNote. Just real quick plug for anybody who's going to do a conference poster. We have a poster printer. Departments here provide payment for that, so you can print posters. We even have poster tubes you can take if you're traveling. We also have information about copyright, fair use, image resources for your publications. Very important things. That's also another hour-long discussion. So just have any questions, reference at siumed.edu, and we'll help you. And then I'm going to pass this back to Dr. Lee to finish us off.
Yes, just summarizing our session today, I just prepared the takeaways for you. So like we discussed, literature review is a systematic process of accessing our existing knowledge. It's not paraphrasing the previous studies or just random collection of the literature. And we have to use a systematic approach is vital for identifying and synthesizing the literature. And we should also add our value through the literature review. It's not just replacing the previous studies. Is adding your interpretations and adding your own voice to our knowledge. So, and we need to improve our search skills to find the appropriate literatures from the database, and we should use some of the bibliographic management tools. I did not use any of those for my graduate studies, and I really regret that when I published the article, because I attempted to different journals. I got rejected from one, and I tried to submit it in a different journal, but they require a different reference style, citation style, and I had to change all the citations in the article again. Many hours. So the bibliographic management tool really helps us to work on that kind of revision. That's the takeaways today. I think we have just a little bit of time today. Do you have any questions or comment? WebEx?
Feel free to type your question on the chat. Since you know who our speakers are, you can always email them.
Please do so.
Yeah, great.
All right. So thank you again, Dr. Lee and Mr. Roloff, for covering a great deal of information about literature review.
Thank you.
So I hope all of you have found today's workshop helpful. Crystal Bright will send you a SurveyMonkey email soon, and please be kind to provide your constructive and specific feedback for them to improve. Next month, Dr. Deborah Clayman, our Senior Associate Dean for Education and Curriculum, will talk about writing multiple choice questions. Please register for the event and let us know what you want to learn about the topic so that the speaker can tailor the talk to address your learning needs. Thank you all for joining today's medical education workshop, and we hope to see you again. Take care.
Thank you.